correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience.
Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve. We're going to talk some RPGs and stuff, and I'm babbling because, well, I have a guest tonight, and he and I are very, very good at babbling about RPGs. But before I get into all that, I want to take a minute and tell you about another podcast in the D20 Radio Network, and this week, that's going to be I Should Roll, which is fairly new to the network. They are a Mass Effect actual play podcast. They use a custom system of their own design, which, according to them, mashes together elements of 5th edition D&D and Fate and other things. I haven't actually gotten a chance to talk with them specifically about this, though it's something I'd like to do. I have listened to a couple of the episodes, and, I can say this. I know absolutely nothing about Mass Effect. However, based on listening to them, I can tell you that either they know a ton about Mass Effect and are huge fans and are really, really going for it, or they just like to play with audio stuff because they use all these voice filters and stuff that I'm guessing apply to how the characters sound in the video games. They claim to be Commander Shepard's favorite podcast. On a side note, at a local convention here, a month and a half ago, I actually got to meet Mark Meir, who I believe is the voice of Commander Shepard. And by the way, he's a role-playing gamer. But anyway, so if you're into Mass Effect, you like actual plays, like I said, I've listened to a couple of the episodes. Very, very good role play, good production, worth listening to. So I would advise you to check them out if you're into the Mass Effect stuff or just want a cool, different actual play. So check out I Should Roll. There's a link in our show notes to the D20 Radio Network Discord where you can find a whole bunch of other cool podcasts about various gaming-ish topics. And with all that, I'm going to introduce my guest for this week, which coincidentally ties into the whole D20 gaming blah, 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 because it's Brett Bowen from Studio 404, who I routinely cause mayhem and havoc with at Gamer Nation Con and wherever else we run into each other. So welcome back to Me and Steve, Mr. Honorary Steve Brett.
Yeah, I think this is my fourth episode now. So should we start, as opposed to just being an honorary Steve, should I get like Stevie B or something like that, some other kind of nickname to make it more official?
I mean, is I'm the admin on the Discord. I can probably just do that.
You can totally change my nickname, yes. Or even make a role for it so I have different colors.
So yeah, Brett, Brett's a good friend. We've gamed together much and talked much, and so I figured, why not have Brett on to talk about something? And I don't know why, but the topic of quote unquote Rule Zero or the golden rule of RPGs came up, and we figured we'd have a yarn about that. So, I mean, just because people hear my voice a lot, what are we talking about here, Brett, with this golden rule or Rule Zero?
So it seems to be the common consensus, and it has a couple of different nicknames, sort of like a Gamer's First Law or the Golden Rule, something like that. That is basically like, if this rule gets in the way of you having a good time, ignore it and just move on and keep having a good time. And that seems to be a sort of a disclaimer at the beginning of a lot of RPG books, right next to what is an RPG, as like the first paragraph, or say, while this book includes demons and devils, this is not actually a satanic panic kind of book. Those kind of disclaimers. So yeah, I did a little bit of research into this topic and found a couple of blog posts and whatnot of people that have stances on it in one way or another. And one particular one of like Rule Zero is bullshit. So that's fun. And yeah, it's a matter of, so my pretty much breakdown is encouraging Rule Zero embraces a bit more of the narrative style of play that certain games encourage.
Mhm.
Whereas ignoring or a A rules heavier game shouldn't need or should discourage Rule Zero because they have all these rules for presumably good reasons. And maybe those reasons aren't obvious right at the beginning. And maybe you need to get your system mastery up and read more of the material to get all of it and understand it in order to really grasp why all the rules are there. And you shouldn't be ignoring or altering these rules just yet. Another thing I thought of while I was looking up some information about this is I recalled your favorite saying these days of the developer is saying, "Come and have my fun with me." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right? Okay.
Come share my fun.
Come share my fun. Okay. Right. Well, the developer wrote a whole bunch of words describing how to play their fun.
Mm-hmm.
Rule Zero encourages you to ignore those words.
Yes. Okay. So just because, look, this is very much a stream of consciousness podcast. Everyone who's ever listened to us has probably figured that out, that we ramble and whatever. So yes, it does. But I think it's important to recognize the context of them saying that. It's not ignore the rules. It's if it makes it more fun or a more enjoyable story, feel free to ignore these rules as applicable.
Right.
Which, I mean, I get it. And that's another reason I think you're very good to have this discussion with, because you do work as a developer for at least 2 systems at this point, if not 3.
3, yes. Yeah. 404 has done 2 different systems, and my work at FASA has done Earth Dawn.
Mm-hmm. So, and okay, well, let's just start there, because I don't know a whole lot about Chronicle System, which I know is one of the ones you did with Studio 404.
Correct.
I do know Genesis reasonably well, and FASA, I know you work on Earth Dawn, which is a game I'm currently a player in a campaign for. And in terms of narrative versus rules, Genesis isn't all the way over in the loony bin narrative side of things, like, say, Fate. Okay.
Correct. I often say that I find Genesis to be the perfect middle ground of narrative versus crunchy, because the main part is that most of the crunch happens between sessions of your spending XP and building up your character. And then at the game, you're focusing much more on the narrative. You do a couple of mechanics here and there to contribute to your die pool, but honestly, that seems to be a lot less than putting the die pool together, rolling it, figuring out what the die pool means. That takes a lot more of the time, as far as and that part is still narrative and creative.
Right.
So that's kind of not exactly skipping over the rules, but it's what is in fact encouraged by the rules.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to think of Genesis as either a crunchy system for narrative gamers or a narrative system for crunchy gamers. Like, kind of like you said,
Yeah,
it is right in that middle ground of it's very narrative heavy, but there are mechanics there for people who like to fiddle with the mechanics. Earth Dawn, on the other hand, is not that narrative doesn't play a role in it, because it is a very evocative world, and the system and the world are so deeply intertwined. But it is a much, much, much more structured rule system than, especially Genesis, Star Wars, narrative dice, whatever you want to call it, or even something, more common like your average, D&D or like a Fantasy Age. It's very specific, but they've intertwined it into the world in such a way, like, for those who don't know the system, character levels in Earth Dawn are called circles. But that is an in-world concept. It is perfectly normal for your character to introduce themselves as a 5th level Sky Raider, or a 5th circle Sky Raider, excuse me, or whatever, your discipline is. And that is an in-world terminology. So they've meshed the two together very intricately. And I think that's where, and not having read the blog post that you have, I think that's where some of this can the opposition to this Rule Zero can come in, because and as we were talking a little bit before we turned on the mics for real, there gets a point where you have spent experience or legend points or whatever it's called in your system of choice to be able to do thing X. If it's just cool and the GM lets everyone else do it too, why did you spend the experience points?
Right. Yeah, if you allow talent 1 to do what it does, but also do X, and then somebody else eventually buys talent 2, which only does X, then that talent 2 is a wasted effort. Just keep allowing talent 1 to do it. Or you have to cut it in the bud right there of like, nope, talent 1 can no longer do X because talent 1 is now at the table. As opposed to with more system mastery, perhaps you didn't know about that talent existing or what have you, or just a matter of it made sense at the time, allowed X, but now that it's existing at the table, it can no longer be allowed because this other person's purchase has to be valid.
Right.
To bring it up because I thought about it as you were talking, I think what Rule Zero really is getting at, without actually saying it, is more the matter of if you don't understand a rule or you forget a rule or whatever like that, in the middle of play, roll with it. Just keep going. Don't let the game stop in order to look up or reference or whatnot a rule. I know when I was running D&D Fourth Edition, there were a whole bunch of rules and there were a whole bunch of discrete powers in it. So and they had keywords and we had to look up various things. So I had another rules lawyer at the table who was a player as my rules librarian. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is how it works. You check that. I'm going to keep running the game.
Mm-hmm.
And he would come up and check it, and we would just play through. And that worked really well.
Yeah, that's an appropriate way to handle it. I think, God, it's another thing I say all the time on the podcast, but the one line I heard from Jim Davies, better known in some circles as WebDM, and this he was talking about advice he gives to new players, where he tells them, "Look, play the world, not your character sheet." And I think that's very much in the spirit of what we're talking about in a Rule Zero, where in a
Sort of.
sense, yeah, like, I don't know, it connects in my head. I don't know how to necessarily articulate it. Like, yes, you don't want to cheapen, like we were talking about. You don't want to say, "Oh, hey, you spent the your experience points or whatever to be able to do this thing. I'm just going to let other person do it." You don't want to do that. But at the same point, I think sometimes it's, boy, this is cool and feels right in the circumstance. We're going to let it fly, even though it might not be exactly to the rules. To me, that's the spirit of Rule Zero.
Okay. I think the interesting thing there is that new quote of play your character, not play the world, not your character sheet. That's advice for the player.
It is.
And that works really well, especially for more narrative games where how you say approach something
Mhm.
or what you are trying to do. It's also very much a say what you're doing, and then we'll figure out a role for it.
Right.
And that kind of approach to gaming, which is a much better ROLE playing approach to a game as opposed to just I'm going to roll this. Yeah, but what are you doing first? Or worse, I rolled a 20 on stealth. Yeah, but when did you start sneaking? Where are you going? Stuff like that. So yeah, the describing your action and how you're interacting with the world is a much better approach in general, in my opinion, before dice start hitting the table, and then we can figure out what the action is. But on the GM side, as the person who could allow such permissions to stretch the abilities of a skill, talent, what have you, of an ability, they're the ones who are in charge of. They're the ones who kind of are the world or setting what the world that you're perceiving and interacting with. They're also the ones who give permission for the rules to expand or keep them as individual or discrete as they are written to be.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah. That's, I think the thing is like, and I don't know. I guess I I feel like maybe I'm odd in that I don't fundamentally separate myself mentally between Steve when he's playing and Steve when he's GMing.
Okay, interesting.
Like, yes, there are things I don't worry about. There are things when I'm being a player that will cognitively go, this is categorically not my problem. But maybe I take a more third person view a lot of the time, where I'm in a sense I'm playing my character as a player as an observer of the world, not strictly from the viewpoint of my character.
As in, you're focused on making sure your actions fit with the world, but also, for example, to the betterment of the story or the enjoyment of everyone else at the table?
I think that's a bit it.
Because I can see that as being a shared thought process
Yeah,
for
I think
players. Yeah.
that's probably where I'm at. It's not necessarily that I don't think, what does my character want? What would my character do?
Mhm.
But also, I'm not only thinking of what's going on from the perspective of just my character. And I don't know if that makes like in a sense, it's playing from the perspective of an audience member of the story
Mhm.
as opposed to just one participant in the story. Does that
So let me put out a hypothetical for you to see if it fits. So are you saying I'm going to go into the dark room and I am going to be saying check the door behind you because that's where the assassin is, as opposed to being the character who just goes into the room and doesn't check behind the door? Like the player as the third party gets to have that suspense and or maybe even the little head nod of course there's somebody hiding behind the door or under the desk or whatever like that. Whereas the player has to be uncertain or ignorant of such tropes and just walk into it anyway.
I think, yes, I probably tend to do the latter a little more. There are times where I have made choices to do things that Steve, the player, was 99% sure were going to be ineffective, but I couldn't, because of knowledge I had of the mechanics of the system and or situation, but that I felt like that's what the character. See, in a sense, I feel like I'm contradicting myself, but that's what I felt like watching that character go into that circumstance. That's how I would expect that character to handle it.
Right.
If we'll just say, the circumstance that it's coming to mind, it was an Eberron campaign that Steve ran, and I don't remember what spell it was my character was or ability my character was going to use, but it specifically wouldn't affect demons or devils. And
Mhm.
Steve, the player, me, was pretty damn certain that this opponent we were facing was one of those types, but I had no reason for the character to not just do what he would do in the situation. So yes, I'm going to try and do the thing, even though me as the mind of the player knows that this is probably not going to work.
Mhm.
But it's and I'm very happy to kind of do those type of things and just see what happens.
Mhm.
Like sometimes I am very much, and you've played with me some. I can be a poke it with a stick kind of player
Oh yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just because I don't know, I'm there to enjoy the story as much as help write it.
Mhm.
Like I guess in a sense, I think of myself as an audience member as much as a cast member, if
Gotcha.
that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yep. All right. Interestingly, this is reminding me of a very old story at this point, but early on in my Rollmaster game that was like 10 something years, we were in a dungeon. We came up to the end of a hallway, and there was a little shrine there with a burning fire in it. And
Mhm.
we had gone through as much of the dungeon as we could have. We knew there was more, but we couldn't figure out a way through. So we're looking at this altar with a fire, a bonfire on it. I'm like, okay, either it's a bonfire or it's some weird way to teleport or there's a secret door or something like that that we just cannot find. I looked at my friend and like I had just joined the game, so two of the players didn't really know me well, and I was like, "I'll rock paper scissors for it." So he was like, "Okay." We rock paper scissors. He lost. He jumped in the fire, and the friend, the player who didn't know us very well, was like, "Wait, that's it? that's who you decided?" And he just did it. Like, yeah, somebody had to freaking poke the stick.
Mhm. And I think, like, as a GM, I guess I'd like to encourage creative play. And to me, that I think is in a sense what Rule Zero is trying to get at. I don't think it's actually trying to say ignore the rules. I think it's trying to say if your player comes up with something really cool, don't stress out about making sure the rules allow it, make it work in the story. You know what I mean? And I understand all the perspective, and I think the thing is too, as you get into crunchier systems, it's harder to do that. And part of this whole topic came to my head because I just wrapped up listening to the end of a really, really good, quite long actual play series called Carrion Company that was put out by the Mud and Blood podcast, which uses they admittedly call it like their version of Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition. These are people who have played 1st edition, 2nd edition. Many of them refuse to acknowledge 3rd edition and now 4th edition. By their own admission, they're playing something that started as 4th edition, but some rules they may play by how they remember them from 2nd edition, or this, that, the other
It's
thing.
a weird amalgam of D&D, basically.
Yeah, no, technically they're not playing it right, but they're playing it the way their table plays it.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's the GM called, that's his take on Rule 0 is that, look, it's okay, no, maybe it's not exactly right, but we're not going to, and, as you pointed out how you did in 4th edition, we're not going to drag the game down to go look stuff up. We're just going to roll with it and play it this way. And I have long held the opinion that as long as we're all playing by more or less the same rules, it really doesn't matter what they are.
Right. That's the key thing of the long-term issue of Rule 0 is consistency.
Yes.
It's like, okay, we're going to ignore this rule because it doesn't make sense. We're not having fun with it, whatever like that. Okay. But we're now consistently ignoring this rule, or we are now house ruling around it, and we're going to write that down and be consistent with that, because that's how you play the game in a way that is equitable among every player at the table. And everyone knows what they're dealing with, unless they, of course, don't read the house rules or something.
Yeah, but I think it's some of it comes to playing in the spirit of the game, and I think you didn't get to play in it at Gamer Nation Con this past year. I ran 2 sessions of my weird Genesis hybrid thing that was basically, I wanted to take Finding Bigfoot, because the theme was paranormal, right? So I'm thinking, and you got to witness me making Tolkien part of the Men in Black universe for the Tolkien theme that we had the year before.
Right.
But I have this thing where I like to, as I joke, I like to look at things around a corner. So I went, well, okay. I mean, I love Delta Green. I love Call of Cthulhu. I love all that stuff. And that's great. And that's perfectly on brand. But I wanted to do something different. So, in all honesty, originally I was going to try and write some sort of hack/original system based off of Havoc Brigade to play Finding Bigfoot. And of course, as no one has ever had this happen to them. Oh, wait, this is coming too fast. I don't have time to finish all this up. What can I just grab and make this work? And I went, wait a minute. Genesis is an absolutely gorgeous system for any sort of opposed roll mechanics.
Yep.
It also very much is very easy to play in a, as we've said before, what is it you're doing? We'll figure out what to roll.
Yes.
So I went, okay, so I'm going to make 3 Bigfoot characters, 3 researcher characters, turn them loose and see what happens. And it worked wonderfully in that system. And even the one character that had the primal magic skill, I said, look, and to this, I don't know the Genesis magic rules very well. And I was upfront with the players about this. I said, but look, basically I gave this skill to this character because in many versions of the Bigfoot lore, they have primal magic shamanistic abilities. Just, we're going to play it as what feels right. And so what they ended up doing was, manipulating some plant growth type stuff like that, all of which was very much in the spirit of the game. And we made a couple rolls here and there, and everyone was happy with how it worked. And I guess in my head, that's what Rule 0 is there for. It's not there to say, don't follow the rules. It's saying, use the rules as necessary, but having fun is the primary goal. And like I felt like, that application of that in a sense was what it's there, like, look, just play the spirit of the game or play the world, not the character sheet.
Right.
Yes, the character sheet says, "Oh, I can do, you know, this many levels of protect." Well, yeah, but what is it you're, that's not we're using a rule set to fit the game, not playing a game to fit the rule set.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like, and now that works. And
That
look, as
varies depending on the game a lot.
oh yes,
I think
very
that's
much.
also indicative of the crunchy narrative spectrum.
It is.
Um, but also to get back to Earth Dawn, the many people over its lifespan have said that the system and the world are so integrally linked that you can't translate it to another system. Like there was an attempt to bring it over to there was a book that brought it over to Savage Worlds. It is
Mhm.
largely considered a failure. It did not work well. Somebody tried to bring it over into, I think it was third edition D&D. Absolutely horrible. Just lost so much of the flavor and spirit of the system and setting in the process that it didn't mesh well at all. I like to think that me bringing it over into Genesis worked pretty well. If nothing else, it got me to work on actual Earth Dawn, so I'll take it.
Yeah, and I haven't read your I have a copy of that file somewhere and I haven't actually read it. But Genesis, because I think Genesis at its core wants you to play in the feel of whatever it is you're playing.
Mostly. The big thing that you've often pointed out is like it doesn't do gritty particularly well. It does like high stakes, not even necessarily fantasy, but like high drama, high action.
Well, it look, Genesis and let's just talk you call it Star Wars for
Yeah,
now because that is what the engine was designed for.
absolutely.
It is cinematic, heroic action fantasy.
Hmm.
That is it is so this is where I know I did an episode a long time ago where I talked about it's simulation versus emulation.
Hmm.
Most crunchy games are out to simulate, be it physics, whatever.
Hmm.
Emulation games are trying to get the feel.
Right.
Because Genesis was designed to have that cinematic action, heroic action, aka Star Wars feel,
Hmm.
it's very good because a lot of us like to play that kind of story. So, yeah, I don't, but it, you know, Star Wars by and large, while it has its tense, grittier moments, that's not what it is. It's not Cyberpunk 2020.
Hmm.
Android is not Cyberpunk 2020. It's not, and it's not supposed to be. And I don't think that's not saying it's bad.
Right. They're
I
just
I
different
think
types of stories. They're different genres.
right, and so I think there is an element of you need to pick a system that supports the type of game, type of story you want to tell,
Absolutely. Yes.
and with that, does Rule Zero then become less important because the system, like you pointed out, I think it was before we actually started episode itself, but as a
Possibly.
developer, you write these rules. Now,
Hmm.
actually, I'm going to ask you this because
Yeah.
you know Adam from Gamer Nation Con, right? The
Adam.
Bright Sun Games, Circle of Noms, I think is his handle on Discord. He makes
Okay.
some generator books.
Hmm.
They're actually pretty good. I had him on, and we were talking about some of his books and stuff, and he said he's noticed in his experience playing at conventions, if he plays with the developer of the game, they often tend to ignore rules even more than staunch Rule Zero supporters will say.
Okay. So is he playing a lot of Palladium with Kevin Simbada?
Well,
That's
that's
absolutely
a
what
whole
he
different.
does.
Look, I have said, and I will say more times, the only person who has ever played Palladium completely rules is written is Kevin because he wrote it. Everyone else is still trying to find where that rule is in one of the books.
From what I've been seeing recently, even he's ignoring half of the stuff and just rolling with it.
But my I posited the thought that I wonder if that is because, and maybe you could speak to this as a dev.
Hmm.
As a dev, you're writing rules to try and enforce the feel that you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
If, as the developer of the game, when you run it, you already know that feel. So you're launching straight to the feel and bypassing the rules that are supposed to guide you there. Does that make sense?
I'm scanning my brain to think if I've ever really done that. Admittedly, con games are a slightly different beast because of
Yes.
timing.
Yes.
When you're on a shot clock, a lot of rules go out the window really fast for the sake of speed.
Mhm.
Like, okay, we got 10 minutes left. We're gonna skip all this and just make one roll and we're done. Stuff like that, as opposed to rolling it all out or paying more attention to all the various talents that you have going for you and that should generate all this stuff. Like, just roll this, give yourself 2 boost dice, and move along, and pray to God that you succeed. So preferably, I would like to think that if I'm the dev of the game that I'm running, like for Anarchy and Dragon City, namely, I am focusing a lot on the world setting, but also teaching people how their various character abilities enforce their role or ability to interact with that setting, and also adding more flavor to that feature to explain why it exists in the first place, or how it interacts, and what it means to them, to the rest of the world, that sort of thing. Like, sure, you can pull out a gun, no big deal, but you're all cybered up and you're extra, you're smart linked to this gun, so therefore these other things can work, and you can see through the scope easily, stuff like that. Or especially for Anarchy and Dragon City, how magic works and how that's different than a lot of other things, and how people react to seeing it is very different than most other settings. That kind of stuff I try, and that's also reinforced by, say, knowledge skills. Is like, okay, you rolled this knowledge skill, so here's a big exposition to explain the world setting to you, because your character would know this kind of stuff. And again, that kind of gets back to another very narrative concept, or something that I ran into from narrative games that I like to bring into all games now, is sort of a presumed competence of the character to
Yes.
make up for the lack of exposure of the player, or the fact that the player has a 9 to 5 and is only playing this game for 3 hours once or every other week. So they probably are going to forget stuff, whereas the character, this is life or death. This might be really important for them to know and remember from 5 minutes ago, as opposed to 2 weeks ago when you were last playing. So maybe cut the player a break, and their character does know this stuff.
No, yeah, that's definitely like, and see, the other thing that occasionally rattles around my head is that in this hobby, there are those of us who spend a whole lot of time, even if it's just idle passing thoughts, thinking about gaming.
Yeah.
And we have lots and lots of books. And some of us even spend hours and hours talking on the internet about it.
Weird hobby, that.
But sometimes I try to force myself to remember that, being where I am in this hobby, I'm at least in the deep end of the pool if I haven't gone out well past the deep end.
I think you're digging a deeper part of the pool, but go on.
And, like, it's a thing where sometimes I wonder, like, not that I'm unhealthily obsessed or something like that, but where, where does the average gamer live in that perspective? You and I can sit here and have a conversation about how many different systems reasonably coherently.
Mhm.
I don't know what that number is, but I'm sure it's higher than the average gamer, where, it might be 3 or 4, where you and I could have in-depth conversations on probably 3 or 4 systems that would leave most people going, what the hell are you guys talking about? You know what I mean?
It's probably double digits, but go. Yeah, sorry. Yes, I do know what you mean. Um,
Like,
uh,
sometimes I wonder, like, at what point are we just, are some of these conversations so far into the weeds that they just, and I don't mean this to sound condescending or anything like that,
mm,
are they just over the head of a lot of the gaming community, not because they aren't able to comprehend it, because they don't have the frame of reference.
Right. So let's not deal with the fact of how much of a percentage of the gaming community it is. Let's talk about just new players.
Mm-hmm.
New players have very little mastery of even one system. They approach a new book and they don't exactly know they don't know any of the intricacies to the level that we're talking about. So yeah, in that regard, it's very permissive of the book to say at the very beginning, assuming they're reading it from the beginning, to say, rule 0, if you have a problem with a rule, just move forward and keep playing. Feel free to ignore the rule text for the time being.
Right.
In order to keep having fun with sort of the still, maybe unspoken challenge of, but at the same time, keep reading, learn the rules, play the game this way, or at least try to play the game this way. And then eventually, the big thing is like, especially for, this is the golden thing of like playtesting, is you need to try it more than once. Of course, magic number is like 3. You try it 3 times. If you still don't like the rule at that point, then it needs a change. And usually, if the first time is absolutely horrible, you just tweak it a little bit, like okay, +2 instead of +1 or whatever like that. Little tweaks here and there, and then you keep playing it through and see how that works, feels, etc., and go, all right, is that working or not? No, then scrap it entirely. Go figure out another way to fill in the gap that we're finding. That also makes me think that to a certain degree, Rule 0 is also being permissive of fledgling developers, because you don't like this particular rule, it's getting in the way of your fun, so ignore it. But then eventually you might find the fact of you're having now a gap of how to do X, and therefore you have to fill in that need with something else, and you are going to come up with how your table does that with your house rules, and that starts the snowball down the mountain, and then suddenly we
Fair.
have another developer in the group.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting, it's kind of an interesting concept in that, yeah, it does, in a sense, it flies in the face of all the work that you put into something as a dev, but I think it ultimately is there to say, please have fun with my stuff. Don't get too hung up on all my words. Although I put them there for a reason, but enjoy it. Don't fixate on, don't paint a pretty picture. Don't necessarily worry about coloring in all the lines all the time.
Mm-hmm. I was also thinking about so especially for newer designers or indie designers, like my wording may not be the best thing, or your interpretation of my wording may not lead you to playing a rule in a way that is fun for you. Like I'm not going to say correctly or incorrectly, just in a way that is not fun for you. Therefore, don't let my bad wording wreck your good time. So in a way, it's sort of like I said before, it's a disclaimer saying these rules may not entirely work for you. Please keep going to have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, and I think that's a valid thing, because as I've had some conversations with the designers, I think the creation of games it's kind of just this different animal, because once you wrote Anarchy in Dragon City, you send it to me and I run it. You and I don't think the same.
Of course not.
Now, yes, I can message you and ask you any questions I want to, because I know you and we're friends, but but not everyone has that access or that perspective in the vast majority of
more and more do. That's really the weird thing over on like the FASA channel, is like, no, people are just gonna go right up and ask a dev, how does this actually work?
Well, yeah, as the internet and et cetera has become what it is, yeah, the access is greater. But I don't know, I guess part of me, and this really hit home with Russ Morrissey launching Level Up, his 5th edition augment system.
Oh, right, yes.
EN World. It's a standalone game that is very much based on 5th edition, but expands and does other things too.
Yeah. It shines a light on the fact of, you said there were 3 pillars to role playing.
Yeah, there's
and
a
you
pillar.
Only really focus on one.
There's a pillar, there's a post, and there's a 2x4 stuck in there.
Right.
But once that game launched, his Discord took off with people very passionately discussing proper interpretation and procedure of the rules.
Sure.
And I realized that that was a lot of what had turned me off from most of, or a lot of the 5e community that I had been exposed to, was that in so many cases, they were so focused on the rules say I can this, and this, and how can I exploit that or manipulate that instead of I want to do this cool thing. What rules can like they were thinking, as you put it, I want to roll stealth. I hid. You're in the middle of a freaking lab with fluorescent lights and nothing on it. You can roll all the stealth you want. There's nothing to freaking hide behind.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but I rolled a 37. Good for you. You know what I mean? Like, yes, the rules, yeah, you can make that roll, but in the context of the game, like it doesn't make sense.
So, to a certain degree, it sounds like what they might have been trying to do is go, no, I want, like you said, I want to do X. Is this the ability that allows me to do X? It kind of seems like it does. Is that actually the case, or am I reading it wrong? Or it could have been better off going, I want to do X. Hey, all you system experts, where should I go? Those are two approaches I can see for that same end result. And both are fine when you're doing research to figure out how to build your character, and like, you know, if that's your end goal, that's the big power or whatever you want for your character, you want to know that up at front, as opposed to accidentally going into the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And suddenly finding out that you're actually really good at underwater basket weaving or whatever. You remind me of the fact that Daggerheart, Daggerheart came out, and for obvious reasons, it drew a lot of the 5e crowd. In fact, that was really its intent, was to draw a lot of the 5e crowd over to it to play D&D here in completely different rules set. And similarly, very quickly, online community became very 5e sounding, with a lot of doing rules this way, or you're doing the rules wrong, or this is totally not how that works. And yeah, a lot of hostile discussion.
And look, you know me well enough. I love to have a good semantic debate with anybody. But
is it a semantic debate, or are we just discussing things? There we go. All right.
But part of me likes to turn that off when I sit down to game, or try to, and just be in that kind of combination audience cast member state and just see what happens. You know, like you've played with me enough to know that I very seat of the pants, but like, you know, when we did the Tolkien Men in Black thing,
right,
one of our players had actually visited Hobbiton, and there's a cat, and his name was Peanut, and well, okay, it's Men in Black. There's a cat. Okay, that whole part of the, you know, the thing, I had not planned on there being a cat there at all. But well, there's a cat, and then the original Men in Black, you know, the cat's necklace, and so we just, you know, like I think too, like in a sense, maybe that's again the spirit of Rule Zero is just roll with it, baby. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. Like I said, I think that is the actual intent of it, is to don't let the rules hiccup, stop the game, and just keep moving through. As opposed to, please feel free to ignore all of our hard work whenever you want to.
Yeah, like I don't remember how we calculated the flower bomb that you guys generated. But look, it was the cool climactic end thing. We didn't care about the mechanics. You guys made a great big fireball.
Yeah.
And to me, you could speak as a player, but to me, that felt like a satisfying climax to the whole scene, the whole story. Who cares how we adjudicated it? It happened. It made the ending that was cool and cinematic, and everyone felt like it was a great, you know, climactic shot for the sequence, and there we go.
and still in a very Men in Black summer blockbuster kind of way.
Right. I don't know. Please, I made up 3/4 of the stuff I was doing through that whole thing. I mean, look, I'm still proud of the fact that I put Tolkien in the Men in Black universe so easily, though.
Right. Yeah, similarly, I was running one of my Anarchy and Dragon City modules for Eric Snipple from the Eberron Renewed podcast,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Oh, um, I want to cast a detection spell based on this thing and find the widget that's totally the missing MacGuffin right now." I'm like, "Oh crap! Well, according to what I have written up, it's basically across the street." So sure, here's all this, here's all these difficulties and this, that, and the other thing. And of course, he made the roll. And I believe my reaction was to throw my entire module right up over my shoulder. Let's go. But that's still within the rules. It's that's a different type of rolling with it and working on the fly. That is like, okay, that's ignoring the module that was written up, but that was based on PC action slash a die roll, which especially with the Genesis system is extremely encouraged because triumphs happen, and so
Right.
do despairs for that matter. So every module you run in that system has to have a heaping tablespoon of flexibility.
Mhm.
So I don't see that as a rule zero issue. I think that's a more of a good GM practice of being flexible with the game and the flow of the game and encouraging rewarding player actions, as opposed to anything to do with rules necessarily.
Okay. And I completely get what you're saying there, but in a sense, isn't that encouraging rewarding player actions probably what the intent of Rule Zero is?
In a crunchier game, yes. In a crunchier game where things are more discrete, like Earth Dawn or Rollmaster, where there's a skill for that, or there's a talent for that, or whatever, in a more flexible narrative game like Genesis, you can do those things because the skills are broader, the talents are still pretty specific, or the narrative of the magic skill, like I say, was what was being used there. Makes sense for such things to happen. Plus, the narrative dice results allow a lot of leeway with how the die result is resolved. But in a crunchier system, it's, do you have the spell to do X? Yes or no? If no, sorry, you can't do that yet. Keep practicing. Especially when it's something big like doing a scrying, divination, whatever like that. Generally speaking, you shouldn't just fake that kind of stuff in a crunchier game. This can have the problem of, especially at low levels, it's like, well, I am a magician or an assassin or what have you, and I should be a badass. Well, I'm sorry, you're not a badass yet. You're level 1. You can see badassdom from here. You're not there yet, which is to some degree what like die rolls are for. Like if you're sure you can try the badass thing, but it's going to be a badass difficulty, and you only have a +5.
Mhm.
Maybe the dice are going to be kind to you, but your odds are bad.
Yeah.
And the GM can at least give them a shot at that, and that's still working within the rules as far as like the GM sets the difficulty based on the situation and allows them to try.
So let
Um,
me ask
yeah.
if I can break in here for a second.
Mhm.
Something I've done a time or two, and especially of late, a lot of my GMing, just because of time, ends up happening at conventions. So, like you said, that's a little
Right.
bit of a different kettle of fish in a way. But I have at times asked a player to roll and flat out told them, "Look, I'm not having you roll to see if you successfully do the thing.
Mhm.
I want you to roll, and based on how you roll, it's how well you do the thing, because this is too cool not to happen."
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is very much ignoring the rule,
Hmm.
but
Most
at the
likely, yeah.
same do you do that type of thing at all? Ever?
Um,
I know Genesis isn't real good for that, but
can be. Like you could just take the difficulty out and say, so you're not really gonna fail here. It's more a matter of seeing how many successes you can generate in order to do it faster.
mhm.
But if that's your interest, then you should check out the new game that I'm looking at for trying out soon, called Draw Steel.
I
Which
think I've
maybe I'll
heard
make
of
that my
this.
game of the week as a way to move on to the next segment. So, but a big thing for Draw Steel, especially for combat at least, is it's a 2d10 mechanic. So you roll 2d10, you add your modifier, and there are 3 tiers of results. And usually, tier 1, the lowest tier, is still some amount of progress is made. That's sort of the yes but category.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the yes but, and then it's yes, and then yes and, if you really want to, is actually a mechanic they do use in some of the non-combat scenarios, more skill-based stuff, skill challenge stuff. Like in a combat, it's okay. You got tier 1 result, you do a little bit of damage. Oh, you got a tier 2 result, you do a bit more damage and a cool side effect. Tier 3 damage, you do even more damage and a better side effect or whatever. And you can choose to downgrade it if you want to. So like, oh, but I was really going for the tier 2 side effect, so I'm going to downgrade my result to that. This has the huge benefit, especially from a D&D standpoint, of like if you've ever played in a D&D game with say 6 or more players, and it can take a lengthy amount of time to come around to your turn again, and you miss, so you just sit there waiting for your turnaround again to miss again, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun. You did
Right.
nothing this entire hour of play, effectively, or at least that's what it feels like. It's like, yeah, I might have moved around, I might have taken some hits that other people couldn't have taken, stuff like that, as a fighter tank kind of thing of like, yep, I'm here soaking up damage so that the casters can get the job done. Great. That is a tactical situation, but as far as your actual action that you were trying to contribute to the scenario, you did nothing. So Draw Steel takes care of that in a way by going, nope, everyone's making a little bit of progress, but therefore it becomes more of a race of time, race against time of how fast your side can succeed more than the other side can.
I like that idea. I'll have to. Yeah, It sounds very Powered by the Apocalypse esque in a way, but
In the 3 tiers of result, yes, I agree. Although I think the Draw Steel also has a crit mechanic of if you roll a natural 19 or 20, you get to crit and do more stuff. But yeah, by 3 tiers of result, you're absolutely right.
yeah. Now that, yeah, I don't know. It's been a fun discussion. I don't know if we've decided anything or even figured anything out, but like,
Um, I think we landed on it really in the fact of like the rule zero is far more about in the moment, roll over the rule that doesn't fit and figure it out later, as opposed to not let your game screech to a halt, because that's unfun for everybody.
no, I
Um,
think you're completely right there.
yeah, I think that's the best drawing out the actual intent of rule zero.
I think that's fair. All right. Well, since you've already started it, let's move on to Game of the Week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So, all right. I'll just let you go because you've already started, and we can talk about this some more.
Okay. I'll actually bring up the book for a quick second. So yeah, Draw Steel by MCDM. It was kickstarted last year, and the books are now out and available. It's being called a tactical heroic cinematic fantasy game. It comes in 2 books, one of heroes and one of monsters. And like I said, it's got a neat. While it has a whole lot of D&D elements in the fact of it's fantasy and tactical, and it draws a lot of inspiration from 4th edition D&D, which, as we all know, is the best version. It is, instead of using a flat D20, it's using a 2D10 bell curve to do the randomization. And then on top of that, adding the various skill or what have you bonuses, and then resulting on the various tiers to determine your success rate. The what do they call them here?
You got a link for this? I'm not seeing it.
I can
here. I'm
totally
catching
get you a link for this.
a lot of stuff coming up, I should say, if I search.
I'm sure it's on the
correctly.
MCDM website.
Yeah, possibly. I would think he would have put that over on drive-through, but sometimes drive-through search engine is not the greatest.
It's very crowded in there. But it's also possible that they just didn't go that way, or they haven't gone that way yet.
Yeah, that's possible too. No,
As I recall, this was a very successful Kickstarter. MCDM is not it is known for their quality work.
yeah, yeah,
So it's not
Colville and Company.
I can totally see them going that way.
But no, I mean, what you're talking about, it sounds very interesting. I think my next foray into fantasy gaming, if I'm running it, probably depending on if I want to do kind of more typical high fantasy, I'm probably going to use Fantasy Age because I bought that book when they came out with
Okay.
the second edition. Or if I want to go more gritty, I have this one that it's it's called Warlock exclamation point, and it was
Heard of
expressly
that.
written by a guy who wanted to run the enemy within, but his buddies were much more of a beer and pretzels group than a crunchy Warhammer fantasy group,
Yep.
and so it's but yeah, like Draw Steel sounds very intriguing. It sounds like something I might want to pick over just for system inspiration. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like we were talking about, right? Like some games, you Earth Dawn, right? It's hard, yes, you did the Genesis conversion, but in a sense, it's hard to run Earth Dawn without the Earth Dawn system. And you love Earth Dawn, but you wouldn't want to use the Earth Dawn system for anything else.
Correct. Um, yeah.
And Draw Steel feels like it's probably a little more not entwined to a you know, massive lore stack that is the world that ties everything together. It's more generic, is maybe the appropriate word, but not the
It is not system agnostic, or it's not setting agnostic, I should say, but it does not have a whole lot of featuring what the world is made of.
mhm,
Like I'm seeing a chapter of gods and religion, but I'm not really seeing anything for like an almanac or welcome to the world of blah blah blah. So yeah, I think you're right there in the fact of while they do have certain ancestries and certain backgrounds, and they're using a lot of terms that are just similar enough to other games that it's going to take a little while getting used to the new different terminologies or the same terminology but for a different thing. But I think once you get through that hurdle, it'll work out really well. One other big thing that I like because I know I've told you before, but for your listeners, at this point, what I'm really looking for in systems is having an actual solid social encounter mechanic.
mhm,
Because, role playing through it and talking through it is all well and good until you have the shy person who really wants to play the troubadour, bard, socialite character.
mhm,
And it's like they have all the skills for it, they just don't have the out of game charisma to pull it off. And this Draw Steel has a negotiation chapter that defines how to work out a social encounter, which has some very solid mechanics, some amount of flexibility as far as or some personality, I should say, that you assign to the NPCs to figure out to have them have triggers to go to give you a boost or a penalty, depending on how your role play through it.
mhm.
And the it's very much like a skill challenge, but the length of the skill challenge is based on one of the NPC stats called patience. As
Hmm.
in, how patient are they for this negotiation? How long are they willing to listen to you badger them, and trying to make them agree with you?
No, that's neat though. That actually reminds me too. I talked with Zach Goins, who just kickstarted Raptor Ruckus, which
Hmm.
is Jurassic Morkborg.
Right.
Um, and they redid I forget what he called it, but basically he took the morale system that was in Morkborg and tweaked it to basically you can make, I'm going to call it tenacity attacks against dinosaurs.
Okay.
And basically what this allows you to do is because you're of an era, the Jurassic Park franchise really was birthed, in our, you know, late teen years, whatever.
Yes.
um or early 20s, but we
Tweens,
were
they
there
call it
for
these days.
um, but he didn't want it to be just fight the dinosaurs. He wanted there to be a systematic, something in the system to allow you to beat the encounter without having to try and kill the dinosaur, because that doesn't work with a T-Rex and a human in the Jurassic Park universe.
No.
So basically, he took and made this, I'm going to call it tenacity, and I'm probably getting it wrong, but where basically you can make attacks to wear down the tenacity, or not attacks, but actions to wear down the tenacity. And it creates a mechanical chase mechanic for you to wear down the dinosaur's tenacity and get away.
Mhm.
Which sounds like very much, what you're almost saying is being done here with this social encounter system of tying it to some stat of the NPC in terms of how much do you get to wear them down.
Right. Their willingness to continue the encounter
Yes.
for a broad generalization of it.
Now this sound, I'm going to have to look at this because.
Yeah, so I just looked it up. So they have a starter module called the Delian Tomb on RPG.
Yeah, I saw that.
From there, you can follow the link to the publisher's website, where they will have the full rules on there. They don't have them on drive-through yet, or at all. And yeah, I'm most of the way through. I'm about halfway through the module, and I'm planning on running it for a group around here. What's interesting is all the character. It includes a bunch of character pre-gens, and it reveals them in stages. So, like at the beginning of the module, you only have chunk 1 of the character sheet to worry about, and then you get through a couple of encounters, and it goes, okay, now reveal chunk 2. And you can include those in the mechanics, and the module is expecting you to use those things. And then you get up to chunk 3, and I think that's the full character sheet, and you play through. I don't think that even equates to leveling. It's just a matter of, we don't need these rules yet.
Well, no, that's good though, and that's a very good introductory thing. I think I know the EOTE starter box did very similar to that.
Oh, really? Okay, I never played it.
Yeah, it's here somewhere.
Of course it is.
But yeah, they did it.
Holding
They
up
do
the rest of the pile.
piles. It's plural. I have a bookshelf. I just haven't gotten around to getting it positioned because I need to redo my Madness corner here.
I was gonna say that comment about the depth of the pool earlier. I think that's inversely proportionate to the height of your stack of unread books.
Don't talk about that. We don't. First rule of me and Steve is we don't talk about the stack of books. Because Lord knows the stack of PDFs I have too, that some of which I have the books and some I don't, and blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you're
got?
Okay, so I stumbled across something today, and this literally came out yesterday as we're recording. This is a product game. It's called Isles of the Lost, and it's Isles as in like store aisle, not isle as in islands. And it describes itself as a liminal horror role-playing game of memory, loops, and quiet pursuit. It says you awaken an endless department store. No windows, no clocks, no exits that stay where you left them. Somewhere behind you, something moves with patient certainty, drawn to your presence, echoing your shape. And just the concept of this sounds very interesting. Like I've never seen a game play on this thing specifically. Judging by the way you're apparently looking at your screen, you're very intrigued as well. It says it's rules light, complete character creation process centering on fractured memories, unresolved truth, and the single object you carried in.
Mm-hmm.
So for all of $5 for the PDF, it seems very intriguing. It does say it's for one shots or short campaigns, but
yeah,
I feel like it.
You said this just dropped like the other day. Yeah, look at that. Okay.
Yeah, 11. Well, as we record, it's the 22nd, and it dropped the 21st. Well, technically, it is now the 22nd. When we first started, it was still the 21st.
It's less than 24 hours old. Awesome. Okay.
It says any system agnostic. It sounds like it uses something very, very simple and basic because it says basically the engine is built around two measures: insight, which is understanding, and sensed, how clearly the store and the pursuer noticed you. So it sounds like it's playing off the store being an entity in itself. Which I mean, if you wanted to take this, I don't think it would and go in a fantasy thing. It wouldn't be too hard to. Oh wait, it's a dungeon, not a store.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, yeah, flavor it how you want to, but I feel like if kind of this horror, type thing is your bag, this would have a lot of cool concepts, even if you didn't use it as is. Just like take some of the concepts and figure out how to apply them in whatever it is you are running. This could be,
Yeah.
have a really evocative adventure scenario type thing at minimum.
Yeah, their exploration cycle intrigues me in the fact that they have it broken down so well. Like, it goes orientation, then interaction, then escalation, then revelation. I'm wondering how they break that down further.
Yeah.
The big thing this is reminding me of is I know that there's a number, and I don't even know how. I know it's relatively popular for like Twitch streamers and stuff like that. There are a bunch of like jump scare horror games. The one that I actually played was Faces of Death, I think, where you're basically you're going through a haunted house and getting pieces of a portrait and putting it back together. And of course, the portrait like drove somebody mad or something like that, and you can turn around and suddenly the door that was right in front of you is no longer in front of you, and it's just all sorts of forced perspective stuff and tripping over things to cause triggers and screams and whatever. And so it's very popular on Twitch in the fact of they're showing the game and they're showing the player, so you get to see them in fact scream their head off when they run into a scary part of the game. And that seems to be relatively popular these days. So that might be what this game is trying to go for, is to trigger some of the same things, but at a table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like I said, I don't know. I don't know a darn thing about it, but it just looks interesting. Might have to work it because it implies magic-y stuff. It could work it into a murder mall scenario for Anarchy in Dragon City.
Oh, another murder mall like your Cyberpunk Red game?
Yeah. Well, that was originally conceived for 2020, but yeah.
Sure.
But yeah. But yeah, so that's mine. Like I said, it's called Isles of the Lost, but that's isles like store aisles, not islands.
By Sequestered Industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, if kind of creepy liminal horror stuff is your bag, it definitely I think would be something worth checking out. And like you pointed out, it seems to have some structured mechanic, or not even mechanics, but structured processes you might be able to extract and use in other stuff.
Well, they have actually a pretty good catalog of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of it looks to be
Relatively
like
inexpensive.
generator stuff like that, but that stuff's always fun. Like I love those generator books because I'll open them up and I'll like make one roll and then just but then this and this, and it's like that one roll catalyzes the brain to go all the way through the process. Oh my. All right. Well, so the one thing we haven't talked about much, you obviously are part of Studio 404. Anything exciting or anything people can look into? I know you mentioned you got a con coming up. You guys are going to be doing some stuff at.
Yep. Total Con, or Total Confusion, which is going to be the 40th year of it, is coming up in February. That's up in Marlborough, Massachusetts. Badges are on sale right now. We have a bunch of events that are up there. You can't buy events yet. That's coming up on in January 2nd, which is probably a tax thing to make sure you buy badges in the same calendar year as the event. So go ahead and get your badges now, and then sign up for. You can. They did a kindness this year. They just set up a whole category of Studio 404. So you can just search for us and find all of our events real fast and figure out what works in your schedule. Other than that, so we mentioned earlier that I worked on Genesis and the Chronicle system and Earthdawn. There's one other thing that is less well known because of more of a local issue, local thing. I've also, and kind of how I got my start was working on LARP rules for a local game called the Accelerant System, which is a LARP generic system that is used for many different LARPs in the area, and the area is relatively broad as they are using it down in Virginia too. But I actually got invited to be on the staff of a game that's called In Darkened Dreams, which is starting up next fall, is the current plan. But we have a Discord and a website, and we have the current version of the rule book out, which I did a chunk of work on. And we are still brainstorming up all sorts of things to make and flesh out the world. We're releasing teasers on the regular to get people excited about what the world is going to have in store for them. And I haven't helped run a LARP since '01, so
Not that long. Definitely not.
like right after 9/11 was the last time I ran a LARP. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's kind of getting the juices flowing, and like I'm helping out with creating the cosmology, which therefore gives us all these tools to use to have bad guys use at the players. So I'm expecting that to be a whole lot of fun in the next year or so.
Very cool. Yeah, you have to send me some links to all that stuff so I can put links for people to check out in the notes. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to come have a ramble with me. It's always fun having these discussions with you because we just do the thing.
That's putting it mildly. Yeah, I still feel a little bit weird about the fact of we roomed together at the last Gamer Nation Con, but then didn't actually play any games together at the con.
No, no. It was, although I did get to play Star Wars with Phil.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So I did get to play with Phil, and I got to play alongside Darren at least one session, if not two. I think just one. So I did get some 404 gaming in, just not with you.
Right. Yeah, I got to play in Darren's Mandalorian Brain Job Star Wars game, but moreover, I got to play right next to GM Chris, who was also PCing, which I don't think I've ever seen him do.
Oh wow! Yeah,
He's often too busy running the con or running the games for the con to actually play a game, and it was great.
Yeah. I've never I've gotten to play online with Chris. I haven't gotten a chance to play actually, at the table with him. But Gamer Nation Con will be coming up in a couple months here. Well, what January, February, 4 months, 5 months,
right? Or at least that is the expectation. But my understanding is not to. We probably won't hear word about it until the new year for similar tax reasons of buying tickets on the same calendar year as the event.
It's a level of thing I'm glad I don't have to deal with. Like I said, there are things that I'm very comfortable leaving go. Not my problem. Oh my. Well, thank you for coming to have a conversation and everything else.
Always a pleasure, and it's been too long.
Yeah, it has been quite a while. Since what, studio404.com? Is that the website if people want to go check that out?
Studio 404 Games, yep.
Okay. Yeah, you make Genesis stuff, Mechasys, Anarchy in Dragon City. What's your heist book called?
Legwork and Larceny, which was basically heist rules so that we could use them in Anarchy and Dragon City. And of course, Starcana, which was our original release, so to be on the Genesis Foundry on release.
Well, very, very cool. And I think, with all that, just everyone out there, check out all the links for everything in the show notes. There's links to where you can find us, Patreon, Discord, all the other things. If you really want to listen to us on YouTube, well, it's just a static image on your screen. It's now there for you to do. I don't know. People listen to things how they want to. Apparently, we're on the Samsung podcast distribution thing. So if you have a smart fridge, you can listen to us on your refrigerator. I don't know why anyone would want to do that. Maybe if you have a smart toaster, your toaster can play the podcast too. I don't know. I don't buy smart appliances because Brett's had enough conversations with me. I get weird tech problems that defy the laws of tech, and therefore I try and stay away from complicated things so I don't get even weirder, more complicated problems.
Yep. And of course, in the kitchen, you're dealing with electricity and water at the same time. And yeah, that's just recipe for disaster with you in the middle as the conduit.
Right, right, yes. But yeah, so with all that being said, check out everything, and just want to remind everyone to be kind to each other and get out there and play some RPG.
Have a good night.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @andrpgs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.